Well, one of my favorite things to do on a Sunday, and maybe some of y'all are with me, maybe I can get an amen, or at least I'm with you, Sly. It is like on a Sunday, like after, I'm done with church and everything's finished up with church, is to go home, eat a lunch. I got kids now, so get my kids in bed or nap time or quiet time in their rooms, kind of away from me for a little bit, turn on Sunday football, and just lay on the couch and just pass out. Just pass out, and then wake up a few hours, just like wiping the drool off, and like, okay, where am I? Like what world am I in? Am I in the real world? Like, what's going on? What's happening? It takes me a little bit to kind of know where I'm at, but it's one of my favorite things. Like, I enjoy that Sunday afternoon nap, and the issue is I think I enjoy it more than I think most folks. Like if it's one of those days, like the kids are chaotic and crazy, they didn't eat much, or somehow they got a lot of sugar at the church, or we were just dumb and just kind of gave them a lot of donuts in the morning, and so they're just bouncing off the walls, being chaotic and crazy. I'll find ways to kind of sneak into my room, and my poor wife, like kids are murdering her, like destroying her, fighting her, and I'm out. Like I put football on my phone. It's good background noise and stuff like that, and just kind of pass out, and then wake up later, and my wife's like, I'm going to kill you for real. Like, the kids were about to kill me, and now I'm going to really kill you. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I am lazy. I am a lazy individual. I love to be lazy, and like I mentioned, for y'all who've been here for all 7 weeks, I looked at the 7 deadly sins. I was like, okay, I know for sure I struggle with gluttony. I probably struggle with lust, and sloth is definitely laziness. Is going to be like the three that I'm really nervous to talk about. More so, gluttony and laziness were the ones that I was just like, here we go, because I am a lazy person. Now, the fun thing in doing this series is kind of going through that is like I've just realized, like just in general, like, man, I do struggle with pride. I do struggle with greed. Like I've kind of gone through all of them and realized, like, man, I struggle with them. And I hope that as we've gone through this journey, you've come to realize, like, hey, I struggle a little bit with this. I struggle a little bit with that. Like I have a little bit issue with this. But I didn't know how bad laziness was going to be until I started studying for the 7 deadly sin of gluttony. I just started reading and realizing, okay, wait a minute now. I probably struggle with laziness more than I struggle with stuffing my face. And so this message, as I've been preparing it, we did something different last week. So just kind of sitting on it now for 2 weeks has really been a gut punch to me. And I know for a fact, tonight is one of those messages that I'm definitely trying to preach to myself way more than I'm trying to preach to y'all. Not that y'all guys are not important. Not that y'all hearing this isn't important. I know it's really important and vital for that. But by and large, I know this message is for me. And there's a part of me, if I could be honest with you, I wish Michael was preaching it. He's not here in the room. But there's a part of me I wish he was preaching it. This guy is one of the most disciplined guys that I know. He sails, he fishes, he plays piano, he surfs, he's in great shape, he has a lot of friends, he's in a relationship. I'm like, is there anything this brother can't do? Right? Good thing he's not here. I don't want him to get puffed up, right? Don't want him to deal with the deadly sin of pride, right? So yeah, Charles is like, please don't. Finish up what you got to say about them. Finish complimenting the guy before he comes right back in, right? But for real. And the truth is, as much as I like to say that I'm lazy, we live in a society that's definitely become a lazy one. I always go back to this, right? I've been talking about it, but I truly believe this will forever, COVID and what happened with COVID has changed us and will change future generations. It changed us and it'll change future generations. But I think in this lazy area of laziness, it's it'll change it a whole bunch. Not for example, me, I was lazy before COVID. I know that. But there's some things that all of a sudden started happening because of COVID that just created new habits. And not just for me, but I believe for a whole bunch of people. One, working from home. You could literally wake up 5 minutes before you got to be on that Zoom call, right? Like you wake up 5 minutes right before, right? You just hop in, check in, like, hey, how's everybody doing, right? Things like that. Your hair's all looking, and like you literally just woke up, right? And at some point, you're just like, turn off your camera, you're gonna go brush your teeth, wash your face, and then you come back to me like, hey, hey, are you still there? Oh, yep, I am. And by that point, like you're all freshened up, ready for the day. Like it's crazy now. Like certain companies are developing like softwares and things like that to track people that are working from home, right, that are essentially doing something else, right? If you don't know this, like people are working from home, like all over the place. And so people have developed an app that from time to time, it'll just have the mouse move. And certain software that's tracking your hours, tracking you work from home, right? They do that by your mouse movement. If your mouse is moving enough, right? And like, okay, this person's busy. So people have developed a software that every once in a while, your mouse will move to trick your employers that you're working. Pretty crazy, huh? Not only that, right? For some people, like, listen, going to the movies is a thing in the past. Like when I was younger, like going to the movies on a Friday for a premiere was a thing. You would dress up like a hobbit or dress up like a Jedi, or you would dress up like Spider-Man. You would go all out, go to the movie theaters, and it was a big ordeal. You would stay up Thursday night, wait in line all day. Then you would sit in and enjoy the movie and enjoy the experience. And you wouldn't only do it one time, you would do it like 3 or 4 times that same weekend. But now, well, you know, if you don't want to go, just pay a little bit extra. You can just kind of watch it from home. Like on top of that, like I remember I was listening to a sermon from one of our neighbors here in the greater Houston area, preaching a young adult service, and this person said that they now have created within their budget a new budget line item every month for DoorDash and DoorDash only. Like think about like pre-COVID, right? Like, man, you want to go out to eat, right? It was a big ordeal, family, like we're all going to go, so you kind of dress up, fix your hair a little bit, right? Just enough to not make anybody complain, and everybody would go out to eat on a Friday, Saturday night. Like that's a thing of the past now. Like you can just literally order food, and before you know it, boom, it's delivered at your door, right? You're still in your PJs looking around, right? And you sneak it into the house and hope no one saw you. Grocery stores. Like, I don't know, like my wife's big on like the H-E-B grocery store. Like not me, like I like to pick out my produce. Like I'm that type of guy. I like to pick out my meat, make sure it has plenty of fat, like within the fibers of the beef and everything. Like that's just me. I like to go grocery shop, but by and large, you don't have to go grocery shop anymore. You just say, put on what you want online, and boom, they'll deliver it either to your house or put it in your car, and you just go right back home. Church online, like that's another thing that we've begun to develop that people now do. They don't have to go to church anymore on a Sunday, right? Fight in the car with your loved ones or anything like that. Like, no, you just turn it on, be in your pajamas, and just chill and relax. Now, let me just kind of clarify. I'm not saying that if you do any of these things that I mentioned, you're a lazy person. These are new things that are part of our society, that are just part of everyday life, and I think these are great. Like, man, sometimes though on a busy week, just have your groceries delivered in your car and just go home and listen, that's a lifesaver. I'm not saying these things make you lazy, but I truly believe left unchecked, these things can completely make us lazy. And since COVID, right, there's so many new things that started coming up. Quiet quitting, it's a brand new trend. You hate your job, you just do the bare minimum at your job. And you just do there until you can find something better. Essentially, don't work, let them pay you. I saw here recently a brand new trend on TikTok, bed rotting. Like you just chill and just on your bed and do nothing and just rot on your bed and do nothing at all. Sounds wonderful, but it's not. My wife said, I'm going to get canceled and FPP is going to fire me. The ladies will kick me out by the hair of my beard. But I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. She said, best of luck. I love you. Please find a way to provide for us after you say this, right? But girl dinner, right? Like all because you put Fritos and shredded cheese in your mouth and call them mouth nachos, right? Like, doesn't mean that you're lazy, right? I'm not saying that you're lazy by doing that. But it doesn't sound not lazy, if that makes any sense, right? Like, no, I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm just saying. what we're seeing, I think, around our culture are these lazy trends. And maybe for you, laziness has slowly crept in your life. It slowly started taking over. You slowly found yourself become more and more lazy. Again, our culture, our world has radically changed. It's different from where it was 4 years ago. And because it is so different, maybe laziness has slowly crept into your life. And that's not okay. So tonight, what we're going to be talking about tonight is the deadly sin of sloth or laziness. And so if you have your Bibles, open up to Proverbs chapter 26. And we're going to look at verses 13 through 16. This is one of the most popular verses on laziness. And really, I'm just going to look at two points tonight. First point is, are you lazy? Are you a lazy person? We're going to talk about some things, kind of break this passage up and say, are you lazy? And then second thing, right, do you like being lazy? Just two simple points tonight, and then we're going to be on our way to debate on where we're going to go out to eat after we're done with this. But our first point, are you lazy? Now, before I fully dive into this, let me just kind of define some things, right? Like the deadly sin is sloth, right? Which comes from the word slow, right? The root word of sloth is slow. You just take out the W, add the suffix of TH, right? Which, man, I didn't know this, so I thought this was pretty cool. So I'm going to get a little nerdy here. Just bear with me, right? It forms nouns from verbs and adjectives. TH makes nouns from verbs and adjectives. So basically, this is a slow person. This word existed for 400 years before they found an animal around the 1700s. They're like, oh, wait, this perfectly describes this word. And they attributed it to that and named the sloth. And that's the idea that we're thinking about here, right? Someone that's super slow. Maybe they're like a slow driver, like the people that you kind of get mad at the freeway when you're going down 45 and trying to get somewhere really quick, right? And the person like, come on, just move. It's more than just that. It's a person that's like slow to clean their car, slow to apply for college, slow to apply for a job, slow to make the first move, slow to take care of some responsibilities that they have. That's the idea. A formal definition is the quality or state of being lazy. Now, on top of that, the definition of lazy then is unwilling to work or use energy. That's just wild. Yes, it's the tribute, okay, I don't want to work, like today I don't want to do anything, a la Bruno Mars, right? But it's more than just that. It's like I don't want to use energy. I don't want to do any of this because I don't want to use my energy for that. In the Bible, the word that the Bible continues to use to describe the lazy person is the sluggard, which definition is a lazy, sluggish person. Slow-moving, inactive, lack of energy or alertness. I don't know, just the imagery of that is just I don't know, some of my favorite videos, when someone throws a ball at somebody and the reflexes are so slow, and so it hits them in the face and then they're like, right? That's the idea. A slow-moving, inactive, lack of energy or alertness. Just a person who doesn't want to do anything. Are you lazy? Now, before we jump into this verse, I do want to mention two more things after we define some things, two things. One, I do want to make sure I clarify that sometimes there's lazy people, not because they're just don't want to do anything, don't want to use energy, but for some people, their body just isn't producing the energy. And I want us to make sure, that we're careful not to spiritualize, a physical problem that a person may have. I don't want us to spiritualize, a medical issue a person may be going through. Maybe a person, wants to be in bed all day because medically they're not okay. So my recommendation is get that thing checked out. If you feel I'm lazy, and as I'm noticing I'm becoming a whole lot lazier, get some blood work done. Make sure that you're okay, that we're not trying to spiritualize, a medical condition that you may have. So I want to make sure that we kind of clarify that one right out of the way. But then two, this is in regards to Proverbs, right? This is a little tricky. Laziness is not a sin per se. Like, there's clearly some sins that Proverbs mentions, but by and large, Proverbs is a book of wisdom. It's like, hey, these things are wise to do and these things are not wise to do. For example, like if I decided to just hop on my Instagram and share my Social Security on my stories, right? Is that a sin? Right? If I want to just kind of hop on Facebook and on my I'm old, right? So I still do Facebook. And just hop on my Facebook status and just give out my credit card number. And just kind of post it for the world to see. Say, oh, here you go. I just want to share it. Like, is that a sin? No, it's not a sin. But it's pretty dumb. It's definitely not wise. Wouldn't be the smartest decision that I have ever made. Being lazy isn't a sin, again, per se, but it won't be your wisest decision. You can waste your life. You can lose opportunities. You can miss out on great opportunities. You could be not a proper manager of the great gifts God has given you. And that's some stuff that we'll talk about that, I kind of struggle to fully say it's not a sin, but man, we'll get to that later, that parts that makes it seem like it could be a sin, right? But by and large, what I want to say is that, which I kind of struggle just to fully out say that it's a sin, but I will say this, that left unchecked, laziness will produce sinfulness. So with that in mind, let's jump into Proverbs 26 finally. Sorry, it took a lot to kind of build up to get to that and define terms and make sure we're all on common ground. But this is what Proverbs 26 verse 13 says. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road, there's a lion in the streets. As a door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard in its bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish. It wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. Then the sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. So let's just jump right into verse 13. The sluggard will say, listen, there's a lion on the road, there's a lion on the streets. Now, I will say this, there were lions all over that region in that area. I watched a pretty cool video not that long ago of talking about like why, like England, like always having like all these lion statues, and it's a logo and a symbol. You see it on shields and crests and things like that. Like, why are lions over there? Well, because lions were all over that area. They just weren't in the Sahara Desert. They were all over Europe. They were all over kind of that Israel area and things like that. Of course, humans decided to just kind of hunt them down until it became non-existent and they just completely disappeared. But there was a real possibility that there could be a lion in the streets. At the same time, lions will typically leave you alone if you kind of leave them alone. If a lion, of course, is wandering the streets, like you don't want to go out and say, hey, lion, like let's play, let's wrestle. Right? But by and large, if there's a lot of noise, commotion, movement in the streets, a lion won't just come out of nowhere just to attack you. Unless you harass it, bother it, or it's really, really hungry. So it's a possibility, but by and large, it's like an excuse. So the sluggard is finding any type of excuse to not do what it's supposed to do what they need to do. And that's the same thing with us. A lazy person, if we're a sluggard, will use real problems, real situations to justify our laziness. A good example, for example, is like snow days around here in Houston, right? Like the moment it's going to rain, the moment it gets a little cold, as Houstonians or the greater people in the greater Houston area, what ends up happening? We're glued to the TV and saying, hey, is school going to be canceled? Hey, is the road's going to be canceled? Hey, is my boss going to tell us, hey, you don't have to come into work today? Like, we're glued to the news, glued to our social media, Instagram, Facebooks, things like that to find out, hey, am I going to work or not? I have some other thoughts on all this, but like, listen, it doesn't have to rain. Like, temperatures don't have to drop. And they're canceling schools already. And the whole entire city shuts down. And everybody's fighting at the stores for water and bread and things like that. Is there a real problem? Roads freezing down the road and people driving and getting into wrecks? Yes, that is a real problem. But many people say, hey, like, it's coming. And then they do that. And how many times have we been in that situation where the whole entire city shuts down and nothing happens? It's a beautiful day outside. It's great. It's gorgeous. No rain, no snow, nothing like that. Another one, again, man, I do spend a lot of time on TikTok, right? But like another trend that I saw is like depression rooms. And so if you don't know what a depression room is, it's essentially people that are really, really depressed, stay in their room and says, hey, I can't do anything. So clothes are piled up. You don't know what's clean. You don't know what's dirty. There's trash all over the place, old food all over the place and things like that because they're really depressed, and it just becomes a whole entire mess inside their room. And we're going to dive in a little bit to depression next week. I truly believe that depression is a real thing. I'm not going to be one of those like, oh, that's not real. Like, I'm not going to be one of those guys. We're going to dive a lot more starting next week onto a series that we're going to do on mental health. But by and large, I'm just going to share like Quarters, the TV show is like one of my guilty pleasures. Like when it comes on, man, I'm glued to the TV and I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. It's sick. I get stories on Hoarders. I'm not going to go on a side tangent. But I do love the show Hoarders. And I'll tell you this, in watching that show in the years that I've watched it, listen, no one wakes up the day tomorrow and just chooses not to clean up. No one just wakes up and chooses not to do anything. There's a lot of deep trauma that ends up happening to people that allow people to just kind of allow their life to become a complete mess. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of individuals that self-diagnose their depression. And they've made it a reality. And so then their room becomes extremely messy and they do nothing. And it's literally the worst thing they could do to themselves. I remember actually we had a panel at my old church and we brought counselors and different people to kind of share just kind of like free advice to anybody who may be struggling with mental health and things like that. And we had this one counselor, man, great guy. He's a very respected counselor in the greater Houston area, especially when it comes to depression. And this homeboy, man, just said, hey, listen, even if you think you're depressed, like one, get diagnosed, find out if you are depressed. But then two, like the big thing to combat depression, one piece of advice he always gives to all his clients is this: do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. And maybe you're a depressed person. Maybe your room is a depression room right now. It's a mess. But doing the next right thing may mean, hey, I'm going to grab that water bottle and just throw it in the trash. It may mean, hey, I'm going to grab that bowl of old cereal and milk and mold, and I'm going to just go ahead and take it and put it into the sink. Maybe for you, you've been in this place where you've kind of allowed what's going on and what you're dealing with slowly take effect, and you begin to become a little bit lazy. And you're saying, hey, my depression is crippling. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The best way to do that is to actually go meet with the counselor and talk and work these things through. And that's the issue with the lazy person. These individuals have created a false reality. And they actually believe it. I'm depressed. I'm not going to do anything. They hate me at my job. So you know what? I'm going to be on YouTube all day. You know what? No one's ever going to come and ride in my car. I'm just going to let it become a mess. And they create all these different lies, and they truly believe their lies to justify their laziness. Verse 16 will say, the sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. 7 was considered the number of perfection. So it's this idea that the sluggard has within him a perfect counsel of individuals that are wise, successful at business. Families are awesome. They've raised great kids. Just everything they do is great. It's made out of gold. They're just succeeding and winning at life. And the 7 wise counsel come to the sluggard and say, hey, man, this isn't right. This mentality isn't good. And the sluggard will come up to him and is like, you know what? Y'all guys are wrong. I believe I'm right. And I'm going to go my own way. Essentially, what the guy who's writing Proverbs says this: the sluggard believes the lies. They have come to believe the lie that they know what they're doing with their life. They will do this to continue to justify their laziness. They believe the lie. Is that you? Is there areas in your life that you've become lazy and you've just begun to justify your laziness? Well, I'll never get accepted to any college anyway, so I'm not going to apply. Well, I don't think that job's going to hire me anyway. I think I'm too underqualified, so you know what? I'm not going to put that application in. You know what? This job, it kind of sucks, but you know what? They're rich enough. They can afford me to be on payroll and not do anything here. And we begin to justify all these different lies to the point where we believe it. Is that you? Is that kind of where you're rolling to? Is that where your mind goes? Verse 14 gets even more kind of explicit of what a lazy person looks like. It's like as a door is on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his own bed. As we know, as you walk in and we close these doors now, like doors don't move. The hinges move back and forth, but by and large, the door stays there. And as you walk out, you'll push through that door, and then by the time you're done, that door's going to go right back. That's the idea that he's trying to communicate to the sluggard, is a person who doesn't want to move from bed and just stay there as, like I mentioned earlier, bed rotting. Person will stay on their bed. They may just toss and turn because little parts of their bodies begin to hurt just laying there all day, but they're not leaving that bed for that whole entire day. They're going to be there all day long. And that isn't good. I know, for example, for me, like when I become, like I mentioned, Sundays, turn off everything, make sure everybody's doing it, and I just sit there and watch TV. Like, I'm on that couch and I can be there for hours. Because, well, there's a 12 o'clock game, and then after the 12 o'clock game, then there's the 3 o'clock game, and then after the 3 o'clock game, you know, there's a little break right there, a little highlights, but then the 7 o'clock game, Sunday Night Football starts, right? And then after Sunday Night Football, you know, and I could be there, I could justify being there all day long. And that isn't good. Are you a person that kind of catches your days just being in a certain location, not moving from that location all day long? Maybe you only get up just to get food and then come back. And I'm not saying a day of rest is bad. Days of rest are good. But if you're doing this all the time, you could be a person that struggles with laziness. Verse 15 says the sluggard buries his hand in the dish and it wears them out to bring back to the mouth. It's just like the imagery is just hilarious. Somebody's just like, I don't know, man. My mentality just goes to like Thanksgiving. A sluggard just kind of puts his hands in the mashed potatoes and like, okay, I can't get it back up. Like I can't get it here to my mouth. Could someone help? Could someone help? I'm hungry and I just can't. I'm so tired and lazy. I really want to eat the mashed potato. I don't know why mine goes there, but my mind always goes to that imagery. What the writer of Proverbs is communicating this, it's self-destruction. He or she will die. That's the big picture. The big picture is that they have this inner desire for comfort. That love of, I want to make this easy for me, ruins their mind. It creates a machine of self-deception. It ruins ultimately what God has created. God has created you to do more than just kind of sleep in bed all day. God has created you for more than just like, hey, I'm just going to do nothing at my job and just get paid to be there. Like He's created you for more than just like showing up 5 minutes before the Zoom call needs you to be in there. Like He's created you for so much more. And for the lazy person, it becomes uncorrectable. It's essentially self-destruction. It's like when Oppenheimer came out, you know, the whole entire Barbenheimer and everything like that. I went to watch Oppenheimer, and you see this kind of conflict that he has within himself. He creates this bomb that can destroy the whole entire world, and they're trying to do that, you know, for the war and develop it to take out their enemies. And essentially, they're defeated, and he's like, I really don't want to use this because we kind of defeated the enemy already. Like, nah, who cares? We're going to use it anyway just to show that we have power, and because we spent all this money on this device, that we have to go ahead and put it out. And you see that inner conflict because he's like, yo, like we're essentially creating a machine that can essentially kill us all. And that's really the kind of spoiler. Like that's the whole entire conflict of the movie. It's the whole entire point of the movie. He has this inner turmoil, inner conflict of like, man, am I going to really create something that will destroy me? And that just kind of came to mind as I was running. Like I think so many of us, we don't have that thought. That is this bad habit, this thing that I'm doing, like do we have the wherewithal to begin to think like this thing can slowly destroy me? This thing is destroying me. And again, for some it may be medical issues, for some it may be some mental health issues that we need to navigate through and work through. And I think that's totally fine. That's very respectable. For others, like we're slowly destroying ourselves and we don't even think about the fact that we're destroying ourselves. So, are you lazy? And if you can say yes, like, yo, like I've done some quiet quitting, like, you know, I'm at this job, I hate this job, and I'm meaning to apply at this other job, and I haven't yet, or there's this program that I want to apply for, and I haven't applied for it yet, or whatever what reason may be. Point number 2, is it okay for you to be lazy. I believe that no one here is going to say, yeah, like, okay, like, yeah, like I think, being lazy is okay. Like, no, I don't think anybody thinks it's okay for us to be lazy. I think we all realize it's wrong. But why? And I think that's where I really want to kind of dive in the last little bit of time that we have. And point number 2 is like, is it okay to be lazy? Like, biblically speaking, it's not okay to be lazy. Like we have to understand, like, there's that first, like, God created the world and everything in it, and He created human beings to work. You see that very early on in the garden in Genesis chapter 2, verse 5. God says, and the Lord God took man and put him in the garden to work and keep it. When God created humanity, He created them with a job to do. He's like, hey, I'm going to put you in this garden and you're going to keep it. You're going to name all the animals and you're going to tend to the garden, make sure the garden looks nice. Work is okay. God created us for work, and you have so many individuals that will quit job after job because it's not what they feel called to, or they're not passionate or excited about it. Like, listen, part of the reason why we don't like job, it's the curse. We've been cursed, we've been damned, like we don't like work anymore. But God created us originally for us to work. So working, number 1, is not bad. Secondly, on top of that, this idea of work, like, listen, Scripture even says that if you don't work, you shouldn't eat. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 says, for even when we were with you, we would give you the command, if anyone's not willing to work, let him not eat. In this early time in Roman culture, right, it was important to work. Like, they would look down upon the lazy person who would just beg for a handout. And Paul, what he's beginning to tell the church at Thessalonians, like, hey, listen, you need to work. We can't look like we're looking for handouts. If you're able to work, then work. Get after it. Make some money and you can feed yourself. And then on top of that, if you can't, then take care of others. And that's what the early church was known for, this group of people that stepped up. Michelle would talk to me about all the time about the church that she grew up when she was in Oklahoma. She would share that, like, they had a lot of young men, young fathers, and what they would do is they would find all the widows that had any kind of desperate need. They would go. They would build fences. They would cut down trees. They would mow lawn, things like that. And the women would come in and help clean the inside and help cook for the widows and things like that. If there was anybody in need, they would step up and begin to help them out. And what that began to do is like within the community, just people saying, hey, wait a minute now, like, what is this church doing? And they began to take care of the others, and then from top of that, they began to take care of other people outside of their church, which led to within their church, like kind of like a movement of people saying, okay, wait a minute now, like, these people are active in the community, they're taking care of their people, and they're taking care of others. What's going on there? That's the idea, that when you're working, man, it brings honor and glory to God. But I think one of the biggest ones on top of that is, like, it shows that we are a good steward. We don't have enough time because we've been talking about, like, we're going out to eat after and all these places close after and things like that. But the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. In Matthew 25, Jesus shares this analogy. He says, hey, listen, there's 3 guys. And these 3 guys were all working under this one guy, under one master. And this one master gives this one guy 10 coins, he gives another guy 5 coins, and he gives this other guy 1 coin. And he disappears and goes off to do some business. And then when he comes back, he says, okay, I gave y'all guys some money to invest and take care of. What y'all do with it? And the first guy who had the 10 coins says, hey, listen, I got 20 coins. And the master's like, great, this is awesome. Here's some more money, and I want you to continue to do what you're doing. He goes to the second guy who had 5 coins. He's like, hey, how did you do with your money? He's like, I did great. I had got another 5 more. I have 10 total. He's like, that's awesome. Keep on doing what you're doing. And he finally goes to the third one and says, hey, how did you do with what I gave you? And he's like, hey, I was scared. I was terrified. I knew that you didn't like people losing your stuff. So I went ahead and I buried this, covered it up, and just made sure no one uncovered it. So here's your 1 coin back. And Jesus says, this is how the master responds. This is what Jesus says in Matthew 25:26. But the master answered him, you wicked and slothful, you wicked and lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gathered where I scattered no seed. He's saying, hey, listen, you're wicked and you're lazy. Because I gave you a talent. I gave you something to invest. Like he'll even go on, it's like, listen, you could have put it in the bank and just got the interest. And banks don't pay a lot of money on interest. He's like, you could have done that and got the bare minimum, but you didn't do that at all. So he takes that one coin and gives to the guy who does 10. Why do I share all that? I share it because of this reason. God has blessed all of us with air in our lungs, the ability to talk, the ability to move, the ability to use our hands, the ability to use our feet. Just the fact that we are alive, that is a gift. That is God giving you that one coin, that one saying, hey, how are you going to use this coin? The lazy person will say, well, look, God, I did the bare minimum. I went to church on Sunday. You know, I had to get up. I had to brush my teeth. You know, I had to put on some deodorant. You know, I had to bathe. I had to drive my car. You know, I had to get out and pump some gas. I had to drive into the parking lot. You know, I had to, you know, put on my makeup in the parking lot. And fellas, all right, maybe you too, right? I don't know. Then I had to walk in. Then I had to kind of find my Bible, go back in my car and find it. I did that. I did the bare minimum. What more did you want from me? I listened to Dr. Redmond. I didn't fall asleep. I did that. And God's like saying, listen, no, you could have done a whole lot more. For all of us, we can allow laziness to take over and we do the bare minimum, believing that God's going to be happy. And here we have Jesus' thoughts on that, saying, hey, listen, no, he's going to call you wicked and sinful. That's why I mentioned earlier, it's hard for me not to say laziness is a sin, because here you clearly see he's attributed it to that person to being wicked and also attributing to laziness with it. This person is lazy, didn't do what he needed to do, did the bare minimum. Yeah, you didn't lose the coin. But man, I wanted so much more than just you not losing the coin. Yeah, you know what? I gave you the ability to walk, breathe, and live. And yeah, you went to church on Sunday. But man, I wanted you to do so much more. Joni Eareckson Tada, if you've ever seen her, she's just like an amazing woman of God. She's a woman, when she was 14, 15, I think, maybe a little bit older, she was swimming with a whole bunch of friends and in a lake, I think, or near some rocks, and went for a dive, ended up being paralyzed. And she was in a wheelchair for her whole entire life. Had moments where she had to have an iron lung and things like that to help her breathe and things like that. And Joni literally devoted her whole entire life, her ministry, to serving Jesus, preaching and teaching and writing books. And literally she has no movement from her neck down. Literally just on her wheelchair. Even so much so, she says, she hopes that she can take her wheelchair to heaven to say, Jesus, this is how I serve you in this seat. And she uses everything she has to live for Jesus. And so many of us, God has given us so many talents, so many coins. And how are you using that? And we use so many excuses. There's lines in the road, and we don't serve God. That's a problem. Because ultimately, God created us to do His work. And I'm ending on Titus 2:14. This is what Titus 2:14 reads. He says, who gave Himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for Himself a people for His own possession who are zealous for good works. Jesus Christ gave Himself for us to redeem us, to save us from lawlessness or rebellion, to purify people for His own possession. For what? To make us zealous, excited, energetic for good works. Replaces what Jesus Christ did for us on the cross. It replaced a passion within us to do nothing, to do what instead? To do good deeds. That is Christ honoring. And so I look at all of us, I look at myself, and man, are we doing that? As I was reading that and studying that for myself, if I can just be honest and real with y'all, I was saying, hey, listen, do I have passion to do good works? And it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, so many times, that couch, that bed, the phone just like calls me so much to do nothing. And I can get lost in doing nothing when Christ has saved me to do good works. I'm a minister, for goodness sake. And it was a gut check for me, and I know for me where I want to start off, I was meeting with a guy the other day, yesterday actually over Zoom, and we were kind of talking about this message and just kind of talking overall and just general, just kind of where I'm at and things like that. And man, I just want to take some time just to apologize to y'all. That I know many, at least, it feels like for the past year or so, I've justified some laziness in my life. That I know I could have done more. Had some zealousness in my heart for good works. And the thing about sin is just doesn't only affect me. I'm just going to be in bed. It affects all the people around me, and the people that it affects the most are the people that are closest to me. It affects my neighbor because my lawn's getting long and the HOA sending letters and things like that. It affects that person who's trying to sell their house maybe 2 blocks down. Because, hey, there's that guy who has that lawn super long. But as you get closer and closer to me, I know it's affected my wife. I had to apologize to her and my kids. But, man, it's now time to apologize to y'all. That we could be a whole lot further along in some of this cool things that we want to achieve in this ministry. But I've justified it so much that 7 wise people could have came up to me and said, hey, wait a minute now, hey, this isn't. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, but if you understood. And that was all a lie. It just kind of protected me from doing anything, becoming lazy. And I just want to ask for y'all's forgiveness. Because God has saved me not to be passionate about laziness, but to be zealous for good works. And I don't know about you. I don't know where you're at. I know this is where I'm going. I'm walking toward good works and putting death to laziness. And my prayer that you're doing the same. As we begin to move on forward in this journey called life, man, I think we want to do some cool things. And it requires some of us to say, hey, listen, I'm done. Just, I got classes, and I got this job thing lined up, and there's a line in the streets. There's a line in the streets. And we justify it. I think it's time for some of us to say, hey, listen, no, it's time to move. It's time to go. Work is good. It's realizing that God created us to work, to display His goodness. And on top of that, to be zealous for good works. So let's pray. So Lord, I just want to come before you tonight just to ask you, God, to move in our lives. God, I'm praying for the individuals here. I pray that you begin to move in their lives, that you begin to make them zealous for good works that you've created them for. Maybe it is to cook a meal for the neighbor. Maybe it is to mow a lawn for somebody around their block. Maybe it is to finally apply. Maybe it is just to kind of show more energy and effort at the job that they're in. Maybe it is to apply to the college or the school. God, whatever that situation may be, God, I pray that you begin to open up their eyes, that you created them for so much more. God, that you created me for so much more. And I pray, God, that we lift our heads up after this and we just become zealous to do the good works that you've created for us. God, we love you and we thank you. And all these things we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ, we do pray. Amen.